morning's program, we're going to have the devotees speak about Srila Prabhupada in observance of his disappearance anniversary. And that we want to conclude by no later than 9:30. If we're finished before then, it's all right. So I don't know how much time that gives everyone to speak, but please take into consideration that there's quite a few people in the temple room, and they all probably want to say something. So we don't want to go on, I would say, more than 5 minutes. Does that seem reasonable? 5 minute time, 10 at the very most. It'd be easier if we had something prepared to just read, but I'm sure most of it don't. Maybe Veda wrote something. I wish I would have, but I didn't. So you have to be spontaneous, and sometimes when you're spontaneous, it's more difficult to keep track of the time. Okay, so. Yes, ma'am.
I have a question. We all get to speak if we want to?
Well, if we're going to go to 9:30, I doubt if the few Prabhupada disciples that are here could take up that much time. So, yeah, we will.
I'm being told that we're all Prabhupada disciples and we all should get a turn, and so I expect to make it.
Well, that's true, and that's what our plans were. But, many times there's a lot of his direct initiated disciples, and by the time they finish, it's already pretty late. And so that's why in the past it's only been like that. It's because of the time restraints. But I don't see any restraint with that this morning. Is that okay?
I don't know. I'm not going to talk very long, but
well, let us speak first.
Gokula says you can speak first if you like.
Go ahead.
Srila Prabhupada, she can speak. She takes my spot.
No way. You're second.
Unless we're wasting time talking about talking.
Do you want me to?
Yes.
They said so.
Thank you, everybody. I don't have any stories of Prabhupada to tell because I joined in '84, but my connection is through his books, which is the Vani. And I just want to talk about that for a little bit. I just want to talk about how the books grow on me, and I am more and more finding the richness of them, the different layers, and it's wonderful. They keep opening up. Prabhupada said they were his highest ecstasies, his purports were his highest ecstasies, because he was with Krishna when he was writing them. Krishna was with him and guiding him. So, how ecstatic is that? So, and also, they are like his letters to all of us. And that's why sometimes devotees say, well, we should read his letters, and sometimes once a week for Prabhupada, we'll read his letters. But to me, his books are letters to me. And when we read his letters, they're letters to somebody else. So the books are more personal to me. And I always like it best when we have a Bhagavatam class. And there are sometimes appears to be contradictions. And I find that instead of having controversies about the apparent contradictions, we hang in there and wait, and eventually we'll understand the whole picture. And everything he says is true. In Bhagavad Gita 4:34, just try to learn the truth by approaching a spiritual master. And it says this: the self-realized souls can give you the truth because they've seen the truth. So I'm terrible quoting, but so it's not like anything Prabhupada says or writes or anything, everything is the truth. And some people say, well, he was just having a preaching strategy. No, it all fits, it's all true. And more I appreciate that. I just wanted to express that because it's been a big thing for me lately to focus on that fact. So his books are my connection with him, and it's a living connection, and it's deeper and deeper all the time. So I just wanted to share that. Thank you very much.
to go next?
Why don't we do the Prabhupada disciples first and then everyone else?
Okay, so
Sometimes you go.
Somebody else would like to make a leap?
Okay.
Why don't we start with you, Prabhu?
Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pastaya Kutalation Te Bhaktivedanta Swami Kinanda Namaste Saraswate Deve Gurvani Pacharine Nidhase Shanyavari Pastachade Satarine Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. So I was considering how Srila Prabhupada is our founder and Acharya, and that's so true. Without Srila Prabhupada, none of us would have been found. There would be no Hare Krishna movement in this part of the world. And he's the Acharya, the example of how we try to mold ourselves. So without Srila Prabhupada, none of us would exist. I mean, we would be some sort of kami, probably even a V-kami, a simple rascal. So, but by Srila Prabhupada's mercy, we actually not only are our individual selves delivered, but we have a whole society of people, devotees, and organization that's not just congested in a certain little small region of the world, but it's all over the world. And is meant to grow into every town and village. We're all over the world, but generally in big cities, with some rural projects. And of course, we've expanded throughout the internet, but there's a long way to go to accomplish all of Lord Chaitanya's mission, which Srila Prabhupada was so disciplined at trying to his best to accomplish. So another thing that was on my mind was I heard from Gokula this vision that was given by Hridayananda Maharaj, and I had meditated upon it a little bit, and that's the only thing that I really meditated upon saying, so I'll go ahead and speak about that. The little bit I remember that Gokula said, he was saying how Maharaj drew this analogy about a mountain, that there's a big mountain, and Srila Prabhupada's disciples are like the folks, the people that are on top of the mountain. I've come to the top of the mountain. Prabhupada has given me initiation, and I'm trying to be his disciple. So, in that sense, I'm on the top of the mountain, and you feel like you climb Mount Everest. You're given this wonderful opportunity and taking advantage of it to the extent that you receive initiation, and you go on serving and actually sitting here, years later with some record of devotional service. So in that way, we've come to the top of the mountain. But then Maharaj made the example or the analogy that a little ways down the mountain are the next group of disciples. And that gives them a little bit bigger picture of the mountain. Because when you're on top of the mountain, you're on top of the mountain, and that certainly has its wonders and virtues and just a really appreciative connection. But a little bit further down, you get a bigger glimpse of the mountain. I mean, you see a lot more things that may not even be noticed from the top of the mountain. And he went on to say how, generation after generation, people are more removed. But what happens is that you have a bigger picture of the mountain. And so it becomes more obvious, the greatness of the mountain. Not only can you point out the mountain, but you can point out the things that are on the mountain. In our particular example, you can point out the people on the mountain. Because without the mountain, the people were nothing. But because of the mountain being equated to Srila Prabhupada, the people who have followed in his footsteps or who are actually resting on his teachings, there's something. So from a further distance, then you can point not only to the mountain, but to this person and that person. And that way your expansive consciousness of the mountain can be tremendously greater than even the folks on the mountain. So I thought it was, maybe I said it a little bit different because I didn't hear it directly. Gokula heard it directly and I just heard it from him real briefly. But I thought it was a wonderful analogy, a description, and that's what came to my mind to say on Prabhupada's Disappearance Day. I'm going to go ahead and conclude. I would like to give some appeal how sometimes Guja says, I was like just a pig farmer, something like that, small town person, just in the lower modes of material nature. And certainly that's the situation with me, and another proof of Prabhupada's greatness is how he was able to deliver, not only, intelligent and scholarly people and people who grew up in the culture, but people who were, vastly removed from it all, somehow ever, had some interest in something about what he was teaching and just happened to come in contact with him generally by the time I did, usually through his society, and which includes his books, but books were made available by the whole society working together, all those devotees who helped Srila Prabhupada actually put them into print and distribute them. So that's another example of Srila Prabhupada's greatness, that even the ordinary man in society in India, may be simply a general laborer, not even a Brahmin or a Kshatriya or a Vaishya, but just a simple laborer. Prabhupada could deliver even, folks like ourselves. So, and that way, what can we do but continue to offer him as much service as we possibly can, and be loyal to his lotus feet. I mean, after all, it's said that the beauty of a laborer is their loyalty. So at least we can be loyal to his lotus feet. Unlike Kshatriyas who can raise armies of people, they can influence and lead tremendous amounts of people, and Brahmanas can be most gentle and forgiving and mercifully impart the teachings as they are. And Vaishyas can raise vast amounts of wealth, to support Guru and Guranga. At least those laborers can be loyal to Srila Prabhupada's lotus feet and stay dedicated despite all the drama and difficulties that the world that we have to confront in this world, including old age and disease and ultimately death. If we can just remain loyal to Prabhupada's lotus feet, then from the top of the mountain we'll see the mountain in the form of Krishna and all of his entourage and his transcendental world beyond this transient world of birth and death. Srila Prabhupada. Krishna shy, you want to take charge of being the MC up here, and so I don't have to get up and go back and forth and, call on,
This is the first.
persuade somebody else to come on up.
Okay. Next.
I would like to just, because you brought up that example, I'd like to, otherwise I was going to wait. But do you want to have a Manaji go next?
Do you want to go?
No. Okay, I'm too much mental platform. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Puchajane Nivesesha Sunyavari Vaskita Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. So, that example that I had heard Hridayananda Maharaj give, just by chance I happened to catch it one day, and it was on Dandavat TV. It looked like it was last year, maybe in LA, and I only assumed it was maybe Christmas time because there seemed to be like a Christmas tree behind it, but it wasn't decorated. And he was speaking about what was the success of Madhavendra Puri, Madhvacharya's as Sampradaya and the Ramanuja Sampradaya, that they've gone on since, for 1,000, 1,200 years, 800 years. And it's because they put the emphasis on the founder Acharya. Srila Prabhupada never said he was the Diksha Guru of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. He said that he was the founder Acharya, which means he's the Shiksha Guru for everyone for the next 10,000 years. And the example that Maharaj gave was brilliant. Basically, Yogendra Prabhu said it, but if we happen to be, those of us who just happen to be the Diksha disciples of Prabhupada, we were there in the presence, on the top, like you could say then you're on the top of the mountain and you see, wow, this personality is great. But then if you're down below the mountain and you're looking up at the mountain, it's even more grand. And then if you go back, further back, and you see it in connection to an entire mountain range or all the other, landscape, it's a huge mountain. So as you go back in the centuries, it will be even more. You'll get the full appreciation of what Srila Prabhupada has done. And the only way this can happen, the only way we can stay a united but diverse society, because there's going to be many followers now of our Srila Prabhupada's disciples, and they'll have, their little groups and their little groups, but it all should be under the umbrella of the founder Acharya, to stay, because Prabhupada said his books are the law books for the next 10,000 years. He's the founder Acharya. Diksha Gurus, they are important, but they come and go in time or whatever. So, but the Shiksha Guru, the founder Acharya, he is the mountain in this example. And another example, though, that I heard from someone recently, not in connection to this, but it's a good one along those lines, is that when you see, if you're not used to being in the ocean and you see a block of ice floating in the ocean, you think, it's just a little piece of ice, I can float around that. It's actually the tip of an iceberg. Beneath the sea, it's much greater. So we're just seeing the tip of the iceberg. This huge, massive, powerful force, spiritual force. I mean, look how the followers of Jesus Christ, after 2,000 years, and they only had these 4 books from people that were written after Jesus left. We have all of Srila Prabhupada's books that were written by Srila Prabhupada. Well, actually, Prabhupada would say that he didn't write them. He said, every time I read them, I get realizations myself, because they're written by Krishna or Super Soul. He even would re-listen. I heard Sri Bhuvanath through memories, and he said that when he was in London, Prabhupada, after he'd give a lecture, he would go back in his room later in the day and listen to his lecture. And everybody was kind of like, finally someone said, Prabhupada, why are you listening to your own lecture? He said, because I didn't give the lecture, it was Paramatma, Krishna speaking through me. I mean, he was a transparent via medium. So, Prabhupada, this is what has to be emphasized, and then, so that there'll be schism, but we have to try to understand this now. It's important that we, the followers of Srila Prabhupada, first and second generations especially, right now, we all understand this and try to pass this on for the future generations. We want to be Prabhupada Anugas. We want to follow Srila Prabhupada. Just like the Christians say, they want to become Christ-like. We want to be, we want to follow in the footsteps of Srila Prabhupada. I actually heard another lecture by Hridayananda, just coincidentally, where he was breaking down the Sanskrit meaning of pada. And it actually means to go forward. It also means feet, but what goes forward is your feet. So we are following in the lotus feet of Srila Prabhupada. Surrender means to follow the example of the spiritual master, the founder Acharya, and to follow the instructions, the Vani. Prabhupada always stressed the importance of Vani over Vapu. And he talked about it many times. He talked about it in Atlanta on Bhaktisiddhanta Prabhupada's appearance day, that Vani and Vapu is the service and separation service of the instruction up to the spiritual master is much more important. And so, in other words, we want to be able to qualify ourselves to follow in his footsteps. It's like the example that they say, if you want to travel to the sun, you have to develop the qualities of the sun. You have to become like the sun. You can't enter into the sun if you're not having those qualities. We can't enter into the transcendental pastimes of Gauravani. It's all there in his pranam prayers, which he wrote because no one else was qualified. Nivishesha sunyavari paskyata desatarne. What else? Gauravani pacharine. Gauravani, following in, he's bringing us into the Gauravani, the pastimes of Lord Gauranga, his Sankirtan movement, and he's feeding Nivishesha Sunyavadi. Nivishesha is there's three basic categories. That are truths. They're actual, concepts of truth. God, Jiva, and Prakriti. Nivishesha confuses those three. Sometimes they think the Jiva is God, or God is a Jiva or is controlled by the Prakriti. Prabhupada destroyed that. And Sunyavadi means voidism, that everything is coming from nothing. There are actually mathematicians right now that write books after many, many years of studying all these universities. Someone actually came out with a book saying that it is possible to get something from nothing. I mean, I think he wasted a lot of time and a lot of money. And because that is the fool. Only a fool will buy that. There's nothing, you can't get nothing from nothing. Everything, and we all know that we all have, everything comes from someone. And that someone is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. And Srila Prabhupada is the one who came to the West and gave us, and the West gave the world Krishna consciousness. When it started with Lord Chaitanya in India, but Srila Prabhupada is the one who brought it to America, and the Americans, we brought it all over the world with the help of all the other countries as well. It's an international society, and the principles are not based on ethnicity or nationalism or any other qualifications. The qualifications are that we have to be as humble as a blade of grass, as tolerant as a tree, ready to offer all respect to all others in such a humble state. We can chant the holy names constantly, and we can learn how to cooperate with one another to push on Srila Prabhupada's principles. They'll always be even I heard, there's this the Mahabhagavats disagree. There's the story of Ashwatthama that Bhima wanted him dead. Draupadi said, "No, save him, save him." So they made a compromise. They cut his hair off, which is a great insult. It's like a death for a Kshatriya. So it's not like there's going to be not going to be disagreements. There's going to be disagreements, but there's always going to be a way to find a way to work together, to spread this movement, to maintain these principles that have been taught by Srila Prabhupada. And the way to do that is not to minimize the sadhana. Chanting 16 rounds, rising early in the morning, seeing the deities, coming to Guru Puja. Prabhupada said the way to learn how to cooperate is you all attend Guru Puja together. Studying the Srimad Bhagavatam class together, as Mataji pointed out. To hear Prabhupada's he called them his transcendental, emotional ecstasies, he said, his purports were. Emotional ecstasies. So, I'm going on too long, so my wife just told me, and I must follow my better half. And she's always right. So I'd like to thank you all for giving me a chance to, on Srila Prabhupada's Disappearance Day, to say something. And everything I've said, I've only heard from my senior godbrothers. And anyway, Hare Krishna.
Going to be a little hard, these eloquent speakers. I don't speak like them. But continuing the point of the mountain in the books, it is so important actually what Prabhupada wrote in his books. And it's also so important the association of the devotees. We are here, a devotee could be strong by himself for years, but also always needs association. I think it's one of the most important to have devotees friends. And something about the mountain also, continuing Yogendra and Gopularanjana, and Hridayananda Maharaj. Either way, the mountain is Srila Prabhupada. But in the mountain, there's many different creatures, there's many activities going on, there's many millions of different trees and grasses growing, and so many different animals. We are all those people. We are all living different entities, different creatures, some of us less intelligent than others, but we all living in the same mountain. It doesn't matter if that grass, that tree doesn't like the cactus, and the cactus doesn't like the bird who just flew around him, or there's so many variety. Prabhupada is the main nectar, and he's the top of the mountain, spreading all from his lotus feet, all the benefits, all his books, all his standard. The way we can work with each other, Prabhupada said, the proof of love for him is we have to learn how to work with each other and tolerate each other. We're all so different. If Prabhupada would have not come, Srila Prabhupada would have not come here, I would be in jail definitely, but we have different situations. And we didn't really accept Krishna consciousness until we heard it from Srila Prabhupada. So many gurus came around, so many religions, so many activities, yoga people, but it was Srila Prabhupada's word and his purity and his effort and his tolerance with all of us. Jamuna, once we lived in England together in the Bhaktivedanta manor, and anything people said and did in the kitchen, first we had to be quiet. And anything she did, or somebody said something different, she says, go rinse your mouth and wash your hands. And immediately come back and continue, So that rinse mouth and wash hands is purification. We just getting purified.
Is that your phone?
Somebody's phone. See, the evidence that we have to get purified and wash our hands and mouth. But we must work with each other, as that's the most important thing. We must tolerate each other. Because we do love Srila Prabhupada, we have to tolerate each other. And we're not going to agree all the time. Most of the times we're not. But ISKCON is still here and is still going for 10,000 years. And Srila Prabhupada is the basic person. And he opened the jar of honey, and we all receive that honey. We just have to taste it. And the nectar of Srila Prabhupada is that his disciples and the friends of the devotees, all the Vaishnavas, we are committed to each other, to work with each other. Because we all taste in this beautiful nectar, chanting the holy name. Jai Srila Prabhupada, Ki Jai.
Krishna Prastaya Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Prajnani Nirvishesha Swami Vari Pasya Hare Krishna. There's a different tact. It's been on my mind for several weeks now that
can you put the mic up with this one?
Srila Prabhupada has stated that when the pure devotee leaves the planet, Maya immediately rushes in to try to dissuade all his followers, testing their sincerity, their determination. So as we have seen, immediately there was chaos when Prabhupada left. We appreciate his association while we're here because we have a contrast to recognize there was a difference, there was a problem. And we were able to overcome that stumble and regain our footing. We're progressing ahead. But what's been on my mind is the fact that the second generation and the new people who are coming are having great difficulty gaining trust in the system since there was this stumble. It's a serious problem that we have to overcome with time by our sincerity, determination, patience, and our enthusiasm. I would like to see examples amongst the younger generation, the new people, and ourselves that are setting the pace for the following generations. As described, the top of the mountain is Srila Prabhupada, and we're all at various stages on the climb to his lotus feet. It's difficult. Obviously, we're all struggling. We can't see Krishna yet. But Prabhupada showed us the path how to do so, how to actually come to Krishna's lotus feet through the parampara system. Taking a vow, making a vow, is critical in that process. And that's where I see the common problem. Vows are something that you mold your life and your future around. It's not something that you cast aside when it's convenient and then take shelter of it when the struggle becomes obvious, the difficulties become obvious. these vows that we take when we accept this initiation from the spiritual master are our link to Krishna. There's no other connection. Reading his books will lead to making a vow. And that's the value of the books, is that we see that Krishna is available, but we have to be convinced enough that we want to take a vow of the system. We want to make a vow to the lotus feet of the spiritual master. And this is the process he's described. Parampara. It's critically important to all of us to understand that and to pass that message on. I was asked by Bhishma Prabhu to describe a pastime that my only pastime was Srila Prabhupada. I was a temple guard in Miami when he came to visit in 1975. And being one of the temple guards, of course, you don't get much direct association with him because you're protecting the rest of the devotees who are able to associate with him. So he had one bodyguard, the leader of our group of guards, and he was Prabhupada's personal assistant. Shruti Kirti Prabhu was his personal servant, but Chaitanya Jivan was his personal bodyguard. And I was in charge of the perimeter. So it was a unique experience. But under the banyan trees out on the property, Naimasharanya in Miami, he was giving class under the banyan trees. And I just had to drift on my passage around the perimeter. I had to come in closer and hear some of the class. And so I drifted into the back of the group and was leaning against one of the banyan trees, listening to class. And it occurred to me that in that position I couldn't really protect the devotees if someone was to come. I couldn't protect Srila Prabhupada. And so I left, walked away from the class. So later, in the evening, it was just about dusk, I was sitting in front of Abhirama's house. Prabhupada was inside. He was staying with Abhirama. And Abhirama, Chaitanya Jivan, I should say, Abhirama's wife, I don't remember her name now, and
Gayatri?
Hmm?
Amaranjan's wife?
no, Abhirama. Anyway, 4 of them were inside, and Prabhupada. And Prabhupada noticed me sitting out in front. I found a position out in front of the house that I could see down the street all the way to the corner, one way, and the road kind of turned so I could see all the way down the street one way and all the way down the street the other way from a concrete bench that was right in front of the house. And so I positioned myself there. I could see in front of the hedge, and I could see down the road, and I could see behind the hedge all of the 3 houses up the road. So I found a good position. And then I hear some rustling behind me, and I turn and look, and I see somebody coming, and I look, and it was Srila Prabhupada. So immediately I dropped down and offered my obeisances, and as soon as I got up, I looked up and down the street to make sure it was still clear, and it was, but as I got up, I saw Srila Prabhupada's feet right in front of me. He was sitting on the other end of the bench. So I stayed on my knees and I said, Srila Prabhupada, how can I serve you? And he said, you can sit here. And he motioned for me to sit next to him on the bench. So I did. I felt very uncomfortable doing so, but I did. And he said, so, what do you think? So I said, Srila Prabhupada, what you've given us is very wonderful. And so he said, Jai. And then he said, I saw you in class in the back, and then you left. Why? So I said, well, I was in the back of the class, but I was thinking that I'm putting the lives of the devotees in danger by my being here listening to class instead of being in front, making sure no one was coming. And he said, that is hearing. So he indicated that hearing Super Soul direct me to do my service because it was more important than hearing the class was, in essence, the essence of the class. So I was very fortunate to get that instruction that understanding our first responsibility is to our responsibility. And then to learn how to progress further from that. So then we hear this tinkling. Artik, 6 o'clock Artik was just starting. So off in the distance from the temple we could hear, we had this arrangement of 7 bells on a little handle that you could put 4 fingers in and shake. And so the Artik, they were using this, a very, very fine silver, so it had a very nice tinkling quality. And Srila Prabhupada said, what is this? And I said, Srila Prabhupada, that's a 6 o'clock Artik. He says, it sounds just like Krishna's foot bells. So I'm sitting there meditating on this sound and trying to remember this is what Krishna's foot bells sound like. And then I stopped. And he says, Krishna just stopped. He's hiding behind a bush, watching the devotees looking for him and searching for him. That's what he is. And then you hear the tinkling starting. He's running to another bush. Like that. So I'm trying to hear what this tone sounds like, trying to memorize it. And he suddenly says, what is this? And I look and he's pointing his cane directly across the street at the house on the other side of the street from where the room is. And I see he's pointing at the sign on the side of the house. And I said, oh, Srila Prabhupada, that's the Maya house. That was the name they had on the side of this house. It was a group called the Maya. They called the group the Maya house, or the house the Maya house. And there was a group of impersonalists that lived directly across from the temple, across from Prabhupada Abhirama's house. So he said, he takes his cane and hits him down on the flagstone pathway in front of him. Click! Just see, we're on the safe side. So with that, he got up and he went back inside to talk to Founder about the Maya house, I suspect. Anyway, all glories to Srila Prabhupada.
Namaste, Saraswati Devi, Gauravani, Vanchakalpa Prabhupada, Kripasanjambhye, Patitanam Bhavanityo Vaishnava. So, actually, what little personal association I have with Srila Prabhupada was in 1975. And as, you know, there's
because of the time restraints, I won't talk about that, but as devotees before me who have spoken have articulated the importance of the Vana, and that's a theme I would like to continue with, because Srila Prabhupada gave us so much in his books. He gave us so much of him that are there in his books. So if we really want to associate with Srila Prabhupada, there's really no excuse. We can't say, well, I wasn't here when he was here, or I didn't get his association. His association's available to all of us. We just need to take advantage of it. And a couple months ago, I was giving class and I was sharing a story of part of my frustration in the early days of having to travel. Part of our philosophy of protecting devotees back then was to always have someone with you. So, because of me traveling to sell incense, the temple president wasn't, other devotees whose service was more important at the temple, whether for cooking or deity service or whatever, the temple president would just generally give me a devotee to travel with that was, let's say, less qualified. So one devotee, as I had mentioned, he couldn't even speak English, and so he couldn't drive, so he couldn't help driving. He couldn't speak English, so it was a little frustrating traveling. So you couldn't communicate really, couldn't much. The next devotee, he had just gotten out of the federal penitentiary, and he didn't last too long because I guess the senses were pulling him back to things that put him into the federal penitentiary. But so after I told the temple president, I said, look, I'll be okay. Just I leave in the morning. Most of the time I'm back in the evening, so I'll be okay just doing my service. I said, you don't have to send anyone with me. So actually, what I decided to do in 1978, when we had gone to India, and this was the first year after Prabhupada had left the planet, and I actually bought a little murti of Srila Prabhupada. And I still have that murti. He's in my kitchen. But what I did was I would put Prabhupada on the seat, on the passenger seat. And, I was trying to be conscious of, that Prabhupada is there always associating with us. If we just have to make the effort to be conscious of him. And, I would try to drive carefully. I would try to, whatever I did, whatever I did, I tried to do it in the consciousness that Prabhupada was right there, to please him,
to do it nicely, whether it was driving carefully or listening to his lectures or whatever. So the point I'm simply trying to make is that Prabhupada's Vani is there for us. And he, philosophically, he explained of the two, it's the more important. So the Bapu Association, naturally, some of our God brothers and God sisters had a lot of it. And I think the common derivative that you can get from listening to that Bapu Association is how much they felt that Prabhupada's love for them. And when you were in Srila Prabhupada's presence, it was easy to feel that also. And also just another aspect that I was conscious of when I was in Prabhupada's presence was how, you know, the way we say it in the West is time stood still. In other words, you were unaware of time. You were like caught in eternity, so to speak. But, you know, I just would like to reiterate everything everyone said so far. It was so nice. You know, all the encouragements. But Srila Prabhupada is there for all of us. And we just need to take advantage of his books. And those older individuals who actually had Prabhupada's association, don't be shy to interact with them and to talk to them. Because I guarantee you, it won't be hard to get them to talk about Prabhupada. So, thank you so much. Hare Krishna.
Would anyone else like to speak at this time?
I mean, there's so many things. I don't have like a script of what I was going to say. It's just, I expected all these people to go before me. So, one thing is that I was listening to a class by Jayapataka Swami, my spiritual master, and he was telling, right now he's putting together a book of all of the Chaitanya pastimes with Chaitanya Bhagavat, Chaitanya Charitamrita, and other different, he's trying to tie everything together. And so he was at this point of wherever he's getting this, he's translating different things. Like Mahabhagavat hasn't been translated, so he's working on that and making a whole compilation. So he was at one part of the text where he was saying, this Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, okay, he would go in from different trances, like from having the mentality of Radharani, he would be like, Krishna, but at the same time, later, a little bit later, he would be, you know, calling out the gopis' names, and he would, you know, have Radharani's mood, but then again, he would be Krishna, and he would say, I'm the one who lifted Govardhan Hill. I'm the one, and he didn't realize he was doing this. So, but right around the same time, though, very few people were around. It wasn't that everyone knew he was the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but because he came as a devotee, he was begging Ishvara Puri to please give him the mercy so that he could attain love for God. So I found this just inconceivable, how the most merciful form of the Lord, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna himself, is begging Ishvara Puri to please accept him as a disciple so that he would have the opportunity to taste Krishna Prema, or to get love of God, and to actually be united with Krishna. So, if the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, Lord Chaitanya, as the devotee of the Lord, if he is begging to take initiation in this process, then he is setting the example for all of us to follow a bona fide spiritual master. And we have the most illuminating personality right before us. It would be what they say as a no-brainer if we were to not realize that Srila Prabhupada is here for us in his books, in his videos, which we have unlimited classes that we could hear. And of course, his followers, his disciples are guiding us and laying out a lot of that for us. So we, on this special day of Srila Prabhupada's disappearance, where it's a very sad and painful day, that we can meditate on how wonderful this personality, in fact, he didn't leave, his body left, but in fact, he's still with us. And he's given us great souls to take shelter of, as he's given us his book. So there's Guru, Sadhu, Shastra. We have all of it, thanks to Srila Prabhupada for translating all of these books. So I feel that we should be so inspired by just with Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's example, that we who don't know anything, and just little jivas, we must take to this process to become purified and to become eligible to go back to Krishna. On saying that, one pastime I can think of Srila Prabhupada was that when he was in Mayapur giving a class, he was saying one must become 100%, 100% devoted to Krishna and following first class, to go back to Godhead. So then he noticed that the devotees kind of felt like, oh, I don't think I could do that. And Prabhupada knows, he didn't have to, nobody has to say that. And then he was like, okay, so he's getting off the Vyasa sign, and then he's like, 90%, it is still okay. And then devotees were still like, ooh. And then he was going a little bit further, and he said, even 80%. And then it was like he was going to leave, right? So he's walking away, and then at the very last moment, he flips his chadar over his shoulder and looks back and said, even 70%, and then he left. So everyone felt like, there's ups and downs in devotional life, but that Prabhupada has given us a family, that it's not just us. If it was just us out on a limb with just Prabhupada, of course we have Prabhupada, but if it was just us and we didn't have association, we're like a stick that can easily break. But if we get a bunch of sticks together, which is all the devotees together, if you have a doubt, ask a devotee, is this right? No, I don't think we should do that. Or Prabhupada didn't say that, or, we get the association of devotees so important for that reason, because a bunch of sticks, especially the sticks that are following Srila Prabhupada, a bunch of those sticks can't be broken. So we have to put ourselves inside that bundle of sticks. And I was talking with Leela the other day. my husband just recently was, he was going a little bit further, and he said, one must become 100% devoted to Krishna and following first class, going nearby, and there were Varaha and Nrsimha devotees that live outside the temple, but they have an amazing garden, and so they invited him in, gave him all these fruits, and they were so happy, asking about us. And the thing is, they're somehow excluded from our community or separated somehow from things that happened in the past. But we were just talking like, look, we're all trying to follow Srila Prabhupada. This is a special day. We should all be very forgiving, but move on to take shelter of Srila Prabhupada. So, we were just thinking, how much more wonderful it would be if all the devotees, many devotees that used to be here were trying to get a reunion. We want everyone to come back. So, I guess I'll stop here. Jai Srila Prabhupada.
So is that an action item?
Anyone else at this time?
Are there any Prabhus that want to go?
Mahalakshmi Prabhus, please.
Just, usually we like to do Prabhus, Mata, Prabhus.
We didn't.
No.
We have a bunch of Prabhus.
It's been mixed.
Oh, Theory Gary?
I'd like to hear everybody.
But you,
Go Mata.
we'd like to hear you also.
Aye.
I'll try to say something. Namo Vishnu Padaya, Krishna Prasnaya Bhutale, Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami, Iti Namne, Namaste Sarasvati Devi, Gauravani Prasharine, Nirvisesa, Sundari, Vashatyani Shatanani. For us, and this day is very auspicious to try to glorify the spiritual master, especially in this day of the disappearance of Srila Prabhupada. Everyone or every devotee in different way take or get different realization about how Srila Prabhupada made for us, And then the best way for try to express our gratitude about Srila Prabhupada making our life is to show and try to keep doing something in devotional service. Everyone in this temple and in this moment, in Hare Krishna moment, we got the big thing in our life and believe Krishna is God. And everyone take or get this sanskara, sanskara means it's like a big impression in our life. And the big impression in our life to believe in Krishna is God, and we believe Krishna is God, and that's work in our life, in our consciousness, is only for the mercy of Srila Prabhupada. And Srila Prabhupada put this sanskara in everyone, in our life, in our heart, in our mind. And we don't got confusion about that, to Krishna's God. And then this sanskara in our life is for the whole eternal life. No matter what we live the body in this form, this sanskara continues in our life for the eternal life, for the eternity. And this is an amazing thing, we got in our life, to Srila Prabhupada put in our life, Then I remember when I was young to read the book of Srila Prabhupada with some friend in Honduras. At that time, we don't got the bodies, we don't got temple in Honduras, And then we joined in Krishna consciousness only for read the book of Srila Prabhupada, And then for me it's very impressed, to change my whole life only for read the book of Srila Prabhupada. And I remember after 1 year and a half, to follow the whole principle and read the book of Srila Prabhupada, we take the decision with my friend to go and live in Costa Rica temple. And we got one plan, to go for 1 month in Costa Rica temple, and the plan is to get the whole knowledge and to take the diksha initiation and get back to Honduras and open one preaching center. That the big illusion for us, not to get everything in 1 month, no? And then I remember we got like a big inspiration, to read the book of Srila Prabhupada, no? And we got this plan, no? And we speak with our parents, with our families, to get permission, no? For traveling to Costa Rica, no? And after 1 month, forget it, no? We don't want to get back to Honduras, no? And open one temple, and to get Diksha initiation, to get the hard knowledge in Krishna consciousness. We're coming back to Honduras after 3 years, you know, for the first time. You know? And then the point for me in this part of my life is the big decision, the big determination I got only for read the book of Srila Prabhupada, no? To try to be the body. You know? I got this very deep desire in my life, you know, to get my life for God. No? And then I believe the whole thing I read in the book of Srila Prabhupada, that's true. No? Then that's the big miracle in my life, you know, how to Srila Prabhupada changed my whole life, you know. And then I really try to express all the time my gratitude for Srila Prabhupada, no? For giving me the whole thing in Krishna consciousness, the devotees, prasadam, good family, good everything, no? And that's all for me, no?
How did you get the book?
I remember my friend Yamasundar, he got one book in his house, and the brother-in-law of this Prabhu, he buy this Bhagavad Gita in Spanish. And this Bhagavad Gita stayed for many times in this house, you know, and this man is very close with me, you know, we are very close friends, you know, we're growing together, you know, with Yamasundar, Gopina, and Madhava. And this Bhagavad Gita stayed for many times, many years in this house. And nobody read. And sometimes Yamasundar, he got this book, and we read something, you know, the picture, the little explication in every picture, and then we read something, and we, little by little, we try to feel more attraction for Krishna, no? And then in my country, we got like a big tradition, no, in different, in this culture, no? But when you see, for example, one old person, old man, no, with big ears, big nose, everybody say, oh, these people or this man is very kind.
Very what?
Very kind.
Oh, kind.
Yeah. That's the tradition. Then when we see the picture of Srila Prabhupada in this Bhagavad Gita, we see big hair, big nose. We believe, oh, this person, he got the truth. And little by little we read, no? We read, and little by little we feel more attraction, no, to Krishna, no? And then, for me, it's just very impressed, no, how we change our life, no, only for read these books, no? And some devotees come from Mexico to make traveling books, to make book distribution, and these people go in different places in Honduras, and this brother-in-law, my friend, he buy this Bhagavad Gita. And we joined in about this. That's the little history about how to Srila Prabhupada changed the whole life, my friend in my life too.
But actually, that you said it was big illusions that think you go off after a month. But in some cases, maybe not a month, but for Prabhupada's really first devotees, he would, after a few months, 6 months, he'd go out, they'd set up a place in Mukunda, went to San Francisco and got something started just after spending a couple of months with Prabhupada in New York. And then they went off to London, and then, that's how the movement started. They didn't have much more training than what you're talking about.
It's incredible, when we're thinking about the potency to read the book of Srila Prabhupada, it's incredible, how to Srila Prabhupada change the life of million persons, and we don't know how many people change their life only for read the book of Srila Prabhupada, and we don't got contact with everyone take book of Srila Prabhupada, And then that's my case, that's my situation. We never meet the body, we never have temple in Honduras. It's only for the mercy to get contact with this book. We change the whole life and we try to be the body. That's the big potency to read the book of Srila Prabhupada. Yeah, Haribol.
We have some Spanish Bhagavad Gitas if you'd like to distribute.
Yeah, okay. That's good.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
And when you start to hear everybody and you just become so overwhelmed with this love for Srila Prabhupada that you know what he's done in your life, and you hear all these stories of how, everyone else came and, the transformation that we have had. I started going to the temple in St. Louis, Missouri, because of my brother. And I was really a nonsense, young, run around, party, stuff like that. And so he stayed in the temple. He got initiated by Srila Prabhupada. And I just always thought there was time. I always thought there was time. And so one day I was sitting in my kitchen, and from the kitchen I could see the big picture window in our living room, which reflected the television. And when I was watching the news, and they said that the Hare Krishna Founder Acharya, Srila Prabhupada, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, had left the planet.
Wow.
And I was just like ready to choke on what I was eating. I couldn't believe that I had wasted so much time. I was going to the temple, I was chanting 4 rounds. I was already a vegetarian before I met the devotees. But I just didn't take that step forward. So after that I started really freaking out, going to the temple and really disturbing everybody. They were mourning, their hearts were broken. And I'm like, what about me? What about me? I'm sorry guys, but what's going to happen to people like me? And so this devotee, we all know him and his wife stayed here, Bhima Das, told me, don't worry, Srila Prabhupada has everything in order. And so the Vani and the Vapu, those 2 relationships, you can really see that I was feeling like I was missing it. Even one time I had the opportunity to see Srila Prabhupada in Detroit. And I was in school, so I didn't want to miss school because I'd be kicked out of my class if I missed too much time. And so I missed it again. So, but Srila Prabhupada set everything up so perfectly for us. And, taking shelter of his disciple is just so perfect for me, because Srila Prabhupada would have left, and I wouldn't, and I would have been struggling with it. In this way, Prabhupada has set it up where, my spiritual master is leading so much my life, the direction of my life. We were so fortunate here at New Talavana that he spent so much time with us. He was coming 2 times a year, just really giving us that taste for Krishna consciousness. One thing I've been really realizing a lot is, like everybody's bringing up the point of reading Srila Prabhupada's books, and how important it is to read Prabhupada's books, that I've really stepped up my reading over the past few years, just reading more and more, and realizing things that, like, was that there when I read this before? You know, I don't remember it quite the same. And when Dribuja and I were on our little Janaka trip, we did a lot of reading, and a lot of Mukunda Maharaj's Miracles on 2nd Avenue was really amazing. All the devotees, like Prabhu was mentioning how he had just come within a couple of months. He started the temple and, you know, went to California, started the temple, and then, you know, Shama Sundar wanting to meet the Beatles and going to London. And just one simple thing, like he was talking about the love that Srila Prabhupada showed them. One time, Srila Prabhupada's watch stopped. And so Mukunda was there and he said, "Oh, well, here, do you want to borrow mine?" And he took off his watch and handed it to Srila Prabhupada. And Prabhupada was like, you know, practical. Put his watch on. And then later, Tamal Krishna's like, "What did you just do?" You know, like, I can't believe you just did that. And it's just a simple little pastime, but it just really softens your heart when you hear these loving exchanges between Srila Prabhupada and the devotees. Anyway, there's so many thoughts in my mind, and I'm just kind of like, you know, when I first get out of the kitchen in the morning, it's a little difficult. But one thing I was thinking is just so important, you know, to read Srila Prabhupada's books and to distribute Srila Prabhupada's books. And several devotees really stick out in my mind, and one of them was Shripati. When we used to do Harinam back in the day, she always was giving Prabhupada's books out and just talking to people. And I was always impressed, you know, how they did that. And then I'm just realizing now, you just do it. You know, that's all you gotta do, is you just do it. Yesterday I was dropping off some clothes at the Goodwill. And the guy, I said, "Get the things out of my trunk, please." So I popped it, and he lifts it up, and he grabs it, and he goes, "So, JPS girl, what's JPS girl mean?" So I explained it to him a little bit, and he's like, "Oh, that sounds really cool. You have a guru? Oh, that's really cool." And I said, "Yeah, actually I have a book all about what we're doing here." Reach in, we had a box of hardbound Bhagavad Gitas, and I just gave the books, and I'm just thinking, you know, this is what we need to be doing, you know, to actually, you know, if you can, just carry a couple of little books with you, you know, and distribute them. And you just feel so happy inside that, you know, like Prabhu was saying, you know, all they did was read that book. They didn't have any other association, you know, just each other and reading Srila Prabhupada's books. That it just changed your life completely. So, anyway, we're only supposed to be here for a few minutes, and I just thank you all so much for tolerating me, or at least doing your best for tolerating me all these years. One thing I was just reading of Srila Prabhupada's, he was saying, you know, how we should always have the mood that we're so offensive. We're so offensive in what we're doing. We're just like beggars. We have really no good qualities. You know, but please, Krishna, just accept some service that I'm doing. In this mood, the humility that Krishna is looking for, not that we can speak some Sanskrit language. And so that meant a lot to me, because I'm lucky that I even speak English. You know, Sanskrit, I'm not a Sanskrit quoter or anything like that. And so if somehow or another I can just have the blessings and the mercy and forgiveness of the devotees, and I'll be able to continue my service in Krishna consciousness. So I thank you all very much.
Colleen just wants
just two little things. I've never felt like I missed out on something because there are the books and the videos. He's alive to me, you know. I don't know why I don't feel like Ruti if only, you know, I would be so much better or different, whatever. It's all happened the right way. And the other thing is, I got a set of gel pens, one's metallic, 8 are metallic, 8 are neon, and 8 are glitter. And so, as I start to study, you know, some of the important books, I think, well, I've got, you know, that's what I bought them for, where I could just underline the most important, you know, points. If I look at the books now, it's like every line. I bought another, like the Brahma Samhita. I don't know how I got, Bhaktisiddhanta. It's, I have to have a big dictionary. And, senior moment. Another senior moment.
You're highlighting Brahma Samhita.
I think I'm supposed to stop. I think that's enough. But that's just those couple of things. Thank you.
Krishna Shrai, you're the MC, you have to speak. There you go.
Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Vastaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Name. A life of service. You know, the Hare Krishnas always have celebrations, and even the departure day of the Acharya is celebrated. The first time I ever saw a picture of Srila Prabhupada was at a Christian conference in the Omni in Atlanta, Georgia. I think it was 72. And it was a big conference. There was about 18,000 Christians there. And someone had gone out for a break, because we had breaks during the conference. It was a week long. And they came back with a Back to Godhead. And that meant a devotee must have crashed the party, because they were in the conference passing out books to the Christians. And so the guy sitting next to me said, "Have you ever seen this magazine?" And I looked at it, and there was a picture of the Srila Prabhupada that Guru Das, I think, had taken, the profile. And I started looking through it, and I was thinking, I wonder if I can get one of these. It was beautiful. The articles and the titles of what they were discussing. And then all of a sudden, the speaker said, "And now we will start our next session." And he said, "Give me my book back." And he got his book back. But first time I've seen Srila Prabhupada on the cover of Back to Godhead. 72. I worked at a little shop, actually after a career with the government for almost 20 years. Worked at a little shop where there was an Indian gentleman, Deepak Shah, and his mother, Mama Shah, owned it, and Deepak Shah had a CD player with speakers outside to play nice music outside, and he told me, why don't I put you in charge of playing the CDs, and if you play this CD, every morning we'll have a great day of sales. And he gave me the CD, and it was specially marked, and he said, this is a guy from America who's famous in India, and people come from all around to his concerts, and he sings so well. And I played it, and I didn't know it, but that was Vaisakhi.
Yes.
Vaisakhi. And he starts, and at the end he's doing the Maha Mantra, but I didn't know it at the time what I was listening to. But every day for several years I would put that CD on and play it outside to Little 5 Points. Little 5 Points Atlanta. And
What year was that?
96, 95, 96. And we would play it outside. Deepak, did you ever meet Deepak Shah? His mother was a member of the Atlanta Temple.
Oh, what she said to me.
That's what she said. But they had an altar in the house. And Bhakti Siddhanta, now that I've seen pictures, I said, he was on Deepak's altar.
So she said.
But Mama Shah said, I'm a devotee of Krishna. She would say that.
You don't know my God.
Oh, that was another story. Mama Shah, there was a couple of us American business owners and little businesses and stuff inside his big business, like a bazaar type thing. And someone was acting up. Mama Shah said, you don't know my God. So one of them, he was really kind of off. There are two things I was thinking of sitting here, and I was thinking about Srila Prabhupada. I think he's going to be coming. And he has a series where he goes around the temples, and he put it on YouTube, and it's called Srila Prabhupada, our Founder Acharya, and how it's important that we continue to recognize Srila Prabhupada in that position. And I think it came about because Sureshwar was going into a meeting, and someone was outside, a devotee was outside eating some prasad, and he said, aren't you going to come in? And he said, to Brother Srila Prabhupada, he said, that's not my guru. And Sureshwar was taken back, and he said, this has got to change. So they came up with this program. And the preeminence of Srila Prabhupada as the Founder Acharya is what that program is about. And I'm looking forward for him. He is still coming, right?
Coming, yeah, around the 10th of January.
Oh, excellent. You should all attend that. And it's a 10-hour series on tapes that he has put out. And I think I've gone through it about 3 times now. And it's just, it's great. It's totally great.
He'll be doing it for the Srimad Bhagavatam class.
Okay.
When is he coming for?
Around the 10th of January. Till the 20th. It'll take him 10 days.
So Srila Prabhupada life service. Second point, or second thing I was thinking about was the Mukunda book.
But Miracle on 22nd.
Yes, Miracle on 2nd Avenue. Right. And I've listened to that about 3 times now.
Listen to it.
Audio.
Wow.
Audio.
Oh.
And you can listen to it again and again. My reading's somewhat challenged. I'm a little slow. But I can listen to it again and again. And Mukunda, he's a Maharaj, yeah. Mukunda Maharaj. At the end, when he had found out Srila Prabhupada had left his body, he was going into a temple and he saw a devotee. He saw a devotee going in who had not heard that Srila Prabhupada had left his body. And so he was about to tell him, and he said, you know, I'm not going to say anything. I'm going to let him have these few extra hours of not knowing Srila Prabhupada had gone. When I finally got around to getting to the Lama temple, excuse me, I looked inside and you could see the mortality of Prabhupada. I said, there's that man that was on that book. Wow, he's really holding still. And I had done meditation at the Buddha Center down the road from Little Five. And so we would sit and look at a wall. And Srila Prabhupada's Murti was perfectly still. And I thought he was meditating. And I found out later Srila Prabhupada had left. On cleaning out books, when my mother passed away, came across a Bhagavad Gita. I was thinking, where did she get that? How did I get here? And evidently, she's from New York, and we would fly back and forth to New York. So guess what? A devotee got her in Bhagavad Gita. So I was thinking, at least she touched it. I don't know if she read it, but it was in her possessions. So the finding, even seeing it or touching it, gives us blessings too. And if she read it, even better. So we can thank Srila Prabhupada for being such a servant to his Guru, ultimately Krishna. And thank you, Srila Prabhupada.
I don't have anything written or anything, but
Does anybody else?
Namakum Vishnu Vidaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Devi Nurvana Prachane Nirvishesha Sunyavari Prachade Shitane. Please forgive me for saying, and I'm not very good at talking and stuff, but what came to my mind was what Gary was saying about books. And when I think it was in '77, and I was going to the Denver temple, and what struck me as a wonderful thing was I was reading the Bhagavad Gita, and as I was reading Bhagavad Gita, how our mind is always giving us doubts about a certain thing or something like that. So, and then as I was reading the purport of the Bhagavad Gita, Srila Prabhupada was so kindly showing the doubt that my mind had. Now, I never met Srila Prabhupada before or anything like that. And then immediately after that, in a philosophical and a logical way, he was showing how I can get rid of that doubt. And I was thinking to myself at that point in '77, this person, I don't even know, he's there, he's right there in his books, he's no ordinary person, and how he helps this conditioned souls like that when even when they don't even know him personally. as a Vapu, but still, in his books, it's like that was such a wonderful experience. I had remembering that, and even at the Cow Festival, I gave some books out or some kind of thing like that, and they were even mentioning the same thing, how they're reading, and they were saying, yes, Srila Prabhupada, he's right there telling me in his books the answers to the questions that I have and everything like that. And another thing, like you were saying about, it reminds me of how Krishna is so kind. He gives us an opportunity to do more to serve Prabhupada or to learn more about it. If it's back to Godhead, my brother, who didn't want anything to do with the Krishna conscious movement, but he knew I would be more interested because I was into that kind of thing, spiritual life. So he got a Back to Godhead magazine in his college where he was at, in Middlesex County College up north in New Jersey. And he said, oh yes, you'll probably need this. You'll probably want this more than I'm going to want it. So he gave me that. And then like on the back of that BTG, there was a feast for the Radha Govinda Mandir. So you see how wonderfully that Krishna has so many wonderful ways to help the person who wants to know more about the goal of life, who Krishna is, and so kindly has. What comes to my mind is that even though Prabhupada was saying, oh, such a horrible place, but still Krishna is saying, out of love for his dearmost friend Krishna, he came down here and gave us, because Krishna wanted to have him write books about him. And actually, I've read this before, how I think it was Malati in her Vyas Pushpan, that how Prabhupada was, of course we heard, I'm not writing these books, Krishna and my spiritual master is, and that how Malati was saying that Krishna was on his shoulder, of telling him, indicating how he should write these wonderful books. I should write things down more. Where I was in, I think, New York Mandir, and you could feel the intensity of the love for Srila Prabhupada and the devastation that was going on for, because he wasn't there anymore. What came to my mind was that now we have to do something wonderful for Srila Prabhupada. And what was happening at that time, was coming about, was the Christmas marathon. So all the devotees would try to cooperate and do something wonderful for Srila Prabhupada, like, the best they could to give out his books and go out and distribute them like that for helping people in the material world. I could think of more, but I'm thinking of God. Thank you so much.
Haridwani, Mother Haridwani.
She's in the back.
She's right there. What about John?
John, would you speak? Good experience. You're welcome.
Jayanti. Jayanti.
Come on, Jayanti.
Come, did it? You can do it. Because you're... Come on.
Another person coming, Dear Krishna Maharaj will be here on December the 3rd. And I forget what day of the week that is. But he'll leave on Friday afternoon, which is the 7th. And he'll be in New Orleans on December the 8th for the New Orleans Rath Yatra.
What is what the interval?
Also,
December the 8th. Yeah.
Also, New Orleans devotees said that if we have some people that need to ride in like one of those go-kart type, not go-kart, but like carts that Haridwani know so that she can get us taken care of.
The avatar is insisting, so I won't take it a minute. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Jai Vaishnavas ki jai. So everyone is, expressing how dear Srila Prabhupada is to them, and I'm right there in that group, feeling so much appreciation. Because we're all on a journey through so many, it's a little inconceivable when Prabhupada explains how many lifetimes. It's not a little inconceivable, very inconceivable to contemplate how long. This is why I didn't want to speak really. How long we've suffered in this material world. So now Prabhupada is giving us the opportunity to be done with it. Like Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj said, this material world is a stool, and we should do our business and get out. And so that's maybe a little hard for people to digest, me among them, because my inclination is to try to fix everything and arrange it so that it's okay, everything's okay, everybody's okay. But that's just not possible in this material world. And Prabhupada came to give us that message. It's especially hard when we're in some suffering condition now, like many of us are becoming, old, diseased. We know what the next thing is. And we're just wanting to fix it. But this material world, Prabhupada explained to us, is a place of purification. And by undergoing that process of purification, then we will become eligible to rejoin the divine couple in our eternal loving relationship with Him. So that's even more inconceivable, but it's possible. It's really possible. I listen to my Guru Maharaj every day, his lectures now, after he explained he came out of the cage of death. And it's just especially significant for us, what he says, his disciples especially, and important to hear from him because he's so in contact with Srila Prabhupada that he's continuing to give us the message that Prabhupada brought. So, I just wanted to please take the opportunity to ask for forgiveness for my countless offenses and to thank the devotees. For giving me and my family the shelter of the Talavana for so long. I pray for the mercy of the previous acharyas and that somehow I can continue to just try to please Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada, please.
Since you're up. Okay.
Yeah, program at noon with Guru puja afternoon, Aarti, Pushpanjali, Guru Puja, and then Teja Prabhu will speak from 1 till 1:45. That's 30 people, 1:45.
Hare Krishna. I want to add one little item that I didn't disclose before. When Srila Prabhupada got up and walked off, after saying, just see we're on the safe side, I immediately dropped down and put my head where his feet were and offered my obeisances. And as I did so, out of the corner of my eye, I saw some movement in the windows in Auntie Rama's house. So I kind of glanced and I saw 4 people dropping below the windowsill and rushing off. So I offered my obeisances quickly and stepped up and walked over by the window and looked. I could see Ali Rama down and running into the kitchen. His wife, Shruti Rupa is her name. Right behind him, and then Shruti Kirti right behind her, and then Chaitanya Jivan behind them. All heading for the back door to meet Srila Prabhupada. So I realized, actually, I can't think of another instance where Srila Prabhupada went anywhere and he wasn't surrounded by devotees. But yet, when he came out front, he was by himself. So at that point I understood. He told them stay inside because he wanted to talk to me alone. So it was a deep realization that he cared so much for how come I left the class that he wanted to speak to me alone about that. And his response was, that is hearing. So I just wanted to make that point that he has so much compassion. He wants to individually make sure that each person is safe in Krishna consciousness. And we should all take note of that because his disciples are the same way. All of us are the same way. We're all trying to help others. And we should take the opportunity when we can. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.